In as little as 72 hours after one fertilizer mistake, I lost a fully healthy pepper plant in a 10-gallon grow bag. One feeding. 3 days later, it collapsed. What I did not understand is that most container plants do not die from lack of fertilizer. They fail from salt buildup in the root zone. I was misreading yellow leaves, and that one mistake was destroying every container I touched. It was not just one plant. I repeated the same mistake across peppers and tomatoes for an entire season before I understood what was really happening underground. Last spring, I filled that bag with premium potting mix. Beautiful plant, everything textbook. Then the lower leaves started turning yellow. My brain said nitrogen deficiency. That is what every chart online tells you. So I mixed a full-strength dose of liquid fertilizer and poured it in. I was so sure I was helping. 3 days later, the leaves were not just yellow, they were brown at the edges, curled up like burnt paper. The plant looked worse than before I fed it. You have seen this pattern if you grow in pots. You check on your tomatoes every morning. You water when the top of the soil looks dry. You see a little yellowing and think it is time to feed. Maybe you even use half strength because you heard pots are different. But the plant keeps looking sad, so you feed again. Eventually, the leaves get those crispy edges. The flowers drop off. The pepper that was forming stops growing. You tell yourself it is bad genetics, bad seed, bad luck, but you lost weeks of growth. Maybe the whole season. Here's what I found when I finally pulled one of those dead peppers out of the pot. The roots were not white and healthy. What I saw was completely different. Brown, limp, and smelling like rot. That is when I understood. I thought I was feeding a hungry plant. I was actually building up salt in the soil. That misunderstanding is behind most container plant failures I have seen. In open ground, excess fertilizer is diluted by soil volume. In a container, salts accumulate in the root zone instead of dispersing into surrounding soil. Feed after feed, that buildup becomes the real problem, not lack of nutrients. Drainage is limited. What stays in the root zone affects how roots pull water. At higher salt levels, the plant struggles to take in water, and in severe cases, it actually starts drying out even when the soil is wet. You do not see the damage above soil first. You see it as wet soil with a dying plant. The edges burn. The plant wilts. I tested this on 2 identical pepper plants. One got full-strength fertilizer. One got quarter strength. The full-strength plant collapsed in under a week. The quarter-strength plant kept producing new growth through the entire cycle. Same water, same sun, same pot. The only difference was how much salt the pot could hold. And once I started checking roots instead of leaves, I saw the same pattern every time. So what about those yellow leaves? Most of the time, lower leaf yellowing in pots is not a hunger signal. It usually means stress from overwatering, cold roots, or salt buildup from previous feedings. Your brain saw yellow and thought food. You made things worse instead of better. That mistake alone can cost you 2 months of growth. After the 3rd failed plant, I stopped guessing and started breaking down every failed pot to see what was happening underground. Here is how to tell real hunger from salt damage without cutting anything open. True nitrogen deficiency is slow and predictable. Bottom leaves fade evenly over time. Clean yellow, no burns, no damage on edges. Just steady yellowing moving upward. If that is what you see, go ahead and feed. Salt burn looks completely different. Leaf tips and edges turn brown first. The yellowing is patchy and irregular. The newest leaves show the damage first, or the leaves curl downward like claws. If you see white crust on the soil surface, you are dealing with buildup. If you see both white crust and brown tips together, that is where most plants do not recover. After I saw that pattern repeat again and again, I stopped guessing completely. I changed every rule I was following. First rule, never feed a dry container. Damage can start within 72 hours. When you pour liquid fertilizer onto dry potting mix, the salts hit the roots at full concentration with no water to dilute them. Always water first with plain water. Wait 15 minutes. Then feed with your diluted solution. Most people skip this step and blame disease. Second rule: forget the label dosage. That instruction on the bottle is calibrated for plants in the ground. For containers, you start at 1/4 strength. Quarter, not half, not 1/3, quarter. If the label says 1 capful per gallon, you give 1/4 capful. Most people see quarter strength and think that cannot possibly be enough, so they double it. 3 weeks later, the white crust appears and they have no idea why. Third rule: feed half as often as you think you should. For most container vegetables in the middle of summer, you need fertilizer every 10 to 14 days. Not weekly, not every 3 days. Every 10 to 14 days. If your plant looks stressed from heat, cold, or pests, stop feeding entirely. Stressed plants cannot use nutrients. Adding fertilizer to a stressed plant makes everything worse. Here is something that surprised me. Organic fertilizers are not automatically safer in containers. Fish emulsion, seaweed, compost tea, they still contribute to salt accumulation over time. They just do it more slowly. In a container, slower still means toxic by week 8. I learned this with a basil bucket that smelled like a swamp after 3 weeks of organic feeds. The plant looked fine above soil. The root zone had already built up too much. Another hidden problem: cold water from the hose shocks container roots more than it affects ground soil. Pour cold water into a black plastic pot on a hot day, and the root zone can drop sharply within minutes. That alone is enough to make flowers drop and leaves curl. Let your water sit in the sun for an hour before mixing fertilizer. Or fill your watering can the night before and leave it indoors. Here is how to fix a pot based on how bad the damage is. Mild case: you see a little white dust on the soil, but the leaves look healthy. Stop feeding for 2 weeks and water normally. The plant will clear it on its own. Moderate case: you see a thick white crust and the leaf tips are brown. Stop feeding immediately. Flush the pot with around 3 times its volume of plain water, poured slowly through the soil. Let it drain completely. Then do not water again until the top 2 inches feel dry. Severe case: the plant still looks bad after 3 days. Remove the top inch of soil and replace it with fresh potting mix. The old top layer holds most of the residue. Recovery is unlikely, but sometimes the plant still pulls through. I had a friend last summer who called me in a panic. His balcony tomatoes looked terrible. Brown edges, curled leaves. He had been feeding every 3 days with full-strength tomato fertilizer. The white crust on the soil was thick enough to scrape off with a spoon. He was ready to throw all 6 plants away. I told him to flush each pot repeatedly, about 20 gallons total per container, until the runoff ran completely clear. 10 days later, new growth came in green. By September, he had more tomatoes than he could eat. He sent me a photo. That photo is still on my phone. A container keeps everything you put into it. So here is what I do now. Week 1 after transplanting into fresh potting mix. Nothing but water. Most premium mixes already contain a starter charge of fertilizer, enough for 3 to 4 weeks. The highest risk period for new gardeners is week 2 through week 4. The plant looks fine and they start feeding early. That is when the first invisible salt layer forms. Week 4. First feeding. 1/4 strength balanced fertilizer. Water first, then feed. Half gallon for a 5-gallon pot. Week 6, same quarter strength. But now I look at the plant. If the leaves are dark green and growth is strong, I skip this feeding entirely. If the lower leaves show that pale uniform yellow, I feed. Week 8 through the rest of the season, every 10 days, quarter strength. Every 4th feeding I use plain water only. That flush prevents buildup from reaching a dangerous level. That is it. No complicated rotation. On my balcony setup with standard container pepper varieties, I got around 20 fruits per plant. My determinate tomatoes in 7-gallon pots produced over 8 pounds each. Here is what changed my entire approach. I stopped asking what the plant needed and started asking what the container could handle. The plant wants more food. That is its nature. The container cannot handle more food. That is just physics. Your job is not to feed the plant. Your job is to stay within what the container can handle. The plant will adjust. A hungry plant in a big pot with low fertility will grow slowly but survive. An overfed plant in a small pot with salt accumulation will fail every time. If you have to make a mistake, underfeed. Now go look at your containers. Check the soil surface. Do you see white crust? Scrape it off. Check the bottom leaves. Brown edges usually mean the system is already overloaded. Pause feeding until growth resets. Here is a quick test. Water your container until water runs out the bottom. Catch that runoff in a saucer. Let it evaporate. If you see white salt rings left behind, your soil has buildup. Flush it now. Yellow leaves do not always mean hunger in containers. In many cases, they are the first signal the collapse has already started. Most container losses I have seen come from this exact misunderstanding. Not pests, not disease. The same mistake. Same result. And it usually starts within 72 hours.